Sure. How far back do you want me to go?
From the beginning.
From the beginning.
As far as you can go.
Okay. I don't know how far back I need to go, but let's see. I'm New Jersey born and raised. Never thought I'd end up spending my whole life in New Jersey. In fact, I left for several years, but I am back. And, I've been an artist my whole life. Probably since I was a child. I always was making art. I decided that I was not going to be an art major and not go to art school for college, and I went to college for English, where I ended up being an art major. So it just was going to happen one way or another. For the past 20 years, I've worked raising money for the arts, and most recently as executive director of an arts nonprofit, Center for Contemporary Art in Bedminster. And a couple years ago, I started to revive my own art practice, which had been somewhat dormant for many years while I was busy working and raising a family. I think being an artist makes me a better art administrator. However, there's also some frustration in being the one supporting all the other artists and not really having time to make my own art. So there's that. This one, this one was one of the earlier cyanotypes. And a cyanotype is a form of photography, basically. It's paper that is treated with a combination of two different chemicals that, when exposed to the light, turn blue or cyan. And I like showing the brushstrokes as part of it rather than just a solid blue field. I had been doing these for a while with stones, and then I discovered that some of the stones were actually, I think, a type of quartz, and the light goes through them, which I loved, as opposed to normally whatever object you place on a cyanotype paper completely blocks the light, and you're left with a white silhouette, which you can see, like this one, it's purely white, and those were more flat objects also. Tons of these stones, because I use them in my large floor pieces, which are mandalas. And then I started, so I was using these, I already had them. Then I started gathering items where I traveled and using them to make the cyanotype. So these are sea oats from Florida, where I was on vacation. I don't know how far, these are, I didn't know what they were actually. I found them on the beach one morning. The beach was covered weird things that looked like worms. But I didn't know what they were, and no one knew what they were, and I let them dry, and then I made a cyanotype with them, and I looked it up later, and it turns out they are parchment worm cake. So, so the materials are all things that I collect personally in my travels and know that I'm going to need them someday. And I don't always know what I'm going to do with the materials when I collect them. And usually that's not the point of whatever I'm doing. Like, it's a hike. And I know that along that hike I'll find things that are useful for my art. I have a huge backpack that I fill up with everything. Some of them are, well, the ones on fabric, there are 3 on fabric, and those were all stones from a stream in North Carolina, for example, that I took specifically to make the cyanotypes with. But that was a more recent development. I don't know, I've always gathered things. I have collections that, my mom returned to me from their attic years ago, of boxes and boxes of shells and rocks from everywhere I've ever been. So it's been happening for a long time. But they're always objects that have a personal connection for me, or a place of personal connection to me. Let's see. I mean, all of these stones, all the circles made with stones, are from a beach in Long Island that I've gone to my whole life. So that's obviously an important place to me. And then this is one of the ones on fabric, and then the two at the other end that are some kind of quartz that I found in the stream in North Carolina. Sand that they collected, Barandina. But I only picked the sand from places that I had actually been, so that I felt like I had that connection. My art influences, as far as artists go, you know,
Could be artists or objects.
yeah, I mean, I'm very interested in, there are a lot of artists today dealing with issues related to the environment and environmentalism and global warming. You know, I'm very interested in that work. I'm also interested in the fact that most of them seem to be women, which I haven't quite figured out the connection, but so I think there's a lot of really exciting work being done by a lot of women. They're circles, obviously, and as I said, you know, the process of making them really became a process of centering myself and finding the center after, you know, a period of somewhat tumultuous period with COVID and intense work time, intense home time, and really, as we thought we were coming out of it, feeling the need to center myself. And I think that it did make a difference, actually, focusing on circular pieces, and I don't know why or how, but it became a very meditative process for me. And I feel centered as a result. I do use lots of objects from New Jersey. I live along the Musconetcong River, so when I do physical pieces, not a print like this, they're filled with things from New Jersey, from the Delaware Water Gap, from the Musconetcong River, from, you know, hikes all over the state, even Sandy Hook. So it's odd that there is nothing from New Jersey in this particular show. How does it connect to the installation practice? Well, it does and it doesn't. These are a very simplified version of the large floor pieces that use all different kinds of materials, stones and seeds and rocks and nuts and branches, I mean, you name it, vines. But this is a very simplified version of those. So I guess the connection is that the final form is also circular. And the process is similar. Though I do feel like the two definitely reflect each other and kind of bounce off each other. But I have not intentionally done that or directly made a connection between one and the other. A circle made with mica that I brought with me, because I hadn't had a chance to do it, and in the winter in New Jersey the sun just isn't strong enough to really get a good print. There's like a faucet next to the tent with a little wash tub that the paper didn't quite fit into, so that was also a challenge. Yeah, but that was a different experience. I kind of enjoyed that, you know, having the whole process take place in one location. Yeah, yeah. So next time I'll bring a bigger tray and, you know, do it in the bathroom maybe, I don't know. But then you have to run back and forth, you know. It's not really easy. Like the parchment worms because they're very different, and it's a kind of getting into an abstract circle. And I also like the second one, this one, stones, so, where these both, if you just place an object on the paper and it has the same light source, you're going to have one silhouette. But if you keep moving it, then the shadow will keep moving and there'll be a little bit less whiteness in different spots. So those two, I think, are my favorites. And that first stone one we were talking about. Well, these were an experiment. These are pieces of fabric that you can buy already treated. The paper I had to treat. So I wasn't really sure how they would go. You know, they have a much more intense blue, and of course the whole fabric is completely blue, whereas when I treat the paper, I like seeing the brush strokes, and I like that it isn't uniformly blue. But I do like it on the fabric And I like all the strings coming out of it. So it's a little different. I don't know what you're supposed to do with a print on fabric, really, like what the purpose of that is. Because maybe you make it into a pillow, I don't know. In a broad range of media. So we talked about the circular floor pieces, which, can be called mandalas, that are made with, all different materials that I collect. I've done a lot of sculptural work with natural objects like sycamore bark or branches. I don't know what else I've done. A lot with sycamore bark, sometimes combining text. So I'd say pretty non-traditional and a broad range of media. I don't feel the need to really be focused in one particular area. I like having a really interdisciplinary practice. When I first started making them, I was doing cloud imagery, and it seemed perfect for that, the white cloud, the blue sky. But I just also love the process, and I also love the color, so, and that's the color it is. I mean, there are a lot of other alternative processes that you can use that have different color schemes, but I do like the cyan a lot. My non-art influences on my work? Well, like I mentioned, probably just things that are happening in the world that aren't necessarily obvious when you're looking at these pieces, but the things that are the reason why I have the need to feel centered. And that could be the greater world at large. It could be, my personal life. All of those things are part of the process, though they might not be obvious to anybody but me.